following is intended only for mature audiences.
Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann, coming to you again from my kitchen, because above ground means there's no kitties causing any havoc. And I am here today to bitch about Minnesota's brake law, otherwise known as State Statutes 177.253 and 177.254. For background, there were complaints and there were issues with certain employers and employees not getting all the breaks that they were owed. And so what we got was the Department of Labor and Industry, the DLI, and the Minnesota legislature who got together and they combined their brains and they wanted to change that to make sure that people got breaks. Which, thank you, good, workers' rights. Just some problems though. Specificity in this totally fucked up my super awesome break schedule at work. Now, let me just give you some short background on these laws. 177.253 is about rest breaks. An employer must allow each employee a rest break of at least 15 minutes or enough time to utilize the nearest convenient restroom, whichever is longer, within each 4 consecutive hours of work. So for every 4 hours, you get a 15-minute break, and it has to be taken within that 4-hour window, or else apparently they can get a slap on the wrist in the legal sense and get sued. 177.254 is about mandatory meal breaks. An employer must permit each employee who is working for 8 or more consecutive hours sufficient time to eat a meal. Payment not required, subdivision 2 here. Nothing in this section requires the employer to pay the employee during the meal. However, there are stipulations that if you are on your lunch break and you're interrupted repeatedly and forced to do work during it, that you must be paid for it. Again, awesome. Workers' rights. Now, that 30-minute lunch break is for any shift 6 hours or longer. And how this applies to me is I used to have this sweetheart deal where we could take an hour lunch or a 45 and a 15. And the majority of us just took a 1-hour lunch, and that was our break in the day. And then you go at 1 minute, and then you come back literally an hour later. You didn't have to worry about it. They pay you for half the goddamn thing. And it was sweet. I started going for walks. It helped me lose weight. It keeps my legs and my back loose because I stay active. I get fresh air and vitamin D from the sunlight. Or sometimes I freeze my nuts off because I do it almost every month out of the year because I was born in Minnesota and I'm not a fucking pussy. But when this law took effect, and they had months to prepare for this, but where I work, they were completely fucking aloof until the day before it went into effect. And they're like, uh-oh, there's a new break law. We could get sued. We have to change things. Sorry, no more 1-hour breaks. And what you're going to have to do is take a 45-minute lunch and a 15-minute break.
God damn it.
I was like, fuck that shit, are you sure? And they're like, yes, we ran it by legal. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to dig into this. And I spent some time looking at the Department of Labor and Industry website and looking at how things break down. And it talks about what time you would take breaks and the frequency with which you would take lunches and breaks. And I was like, oh, I work 8 to 4:30. And it says if you work 8 to 4:30, you're fine. You can take a 1-hour lunch. And I went to them and I'm like, yeah, but you guys have unplanned overtime. So that means you can't do that. So I was pretty fucking pissed off because here's how my day used to go. Show up for work, 8 a.m. We stretch. We have our huddle. We do our thing. I take my lunch anywhere between 11 and 12:15, depending upon the flow of work and what our workload consists of for the day. And then I would go and do my thing. I'd get out. I'd talk on the phone. I'd go a certain pattern around the neighborhood. I knew my distance. It was roughly 2 miles. It was good exercise. It was good fresh air. It was a good break. Most importantly, I didn't have to worry about what time I had to be back. If I punched out at 11:19, I just knew I had to be back at 12:19.
That is correct.
So much like all that thinking that olden times workers did where they were on a construction site sitting on the steel beams and a whistle blew. They're like, oh, that's lunch. Sit on the beam, sit on a rock, sit on anything, grab your pail, eat your food, talk to your buddies, fucking tune out. It's restful, it's relaxing. Whistle blows, time to go back to work. Woo! It's essentially what I knew. So I could walk for, if I timed it right after eating, 40 to 45, maybe even 50 minutes if I really pushed my pace. And it was so great, and it helped me maintain a certain weight. And now I'm forced to do this 45-minute shit and then take a 15-minute break later on. So that's 2 times in my day you're stopping me, right? No, technically it's 3, because now the rest of my crew now starts at 7, except for me because I have kids. They made an exception, so thank you for that. But still, we have a huddle at 9:45 now, almost 3 hours after they start, an hour and 45 after I start. When you have a huddle in the beginning of your day, I can tell you, it's a great way to start. You joke around until the boss gets there. You talk about what the expectations are and the workload for the day. You get all the fucking cards on the table. Occasionally there'd be curveballs throughout that 8 hours afterwards, but it wasn't bad. And now we have this huddle randomly. Sometimes people miss it because clock watching sucks, but you got to watch the clock for the huddle now. And then immediately, the people that start at 7, they go on a 15-minute break right after. Then they come back, and then they work till like 11:30 or 11:45, and then they go on their lunch break. So that's 3 times they're stopping in that span, unless you count how the huddle butts up to their break, but sometimes there's a few minutes of some shit to do in between. For me, huddle at 9:45, if I remember, and then lunch is by 11:40. I have to watch the clock to make sure that I am gone by a certain time so I don't get yelled at for opening them up to litigation. And then I go for 45 minutes. You've condensed my lunch. I have to do everything faster. I have to split up the shit I used to do on break differently. I used to wash up, surf the internet for 5 minutes, go to my car, eat my lunch, take a walk. Now, I wash up, I go to my car, I fucking choke down what is supposed to be lunch, I go for a walk. And I can't give up that walk because at my age, almost 44, I need those steps. Because in prior years, not only was I getting an hour lunch, but I was also on the ground more, not up in the air in a machine. So they've drastically reduced the number of steps I'm taking, and they've shaved 15 minutes off my walk, basically. And I gotta say, I've put on 13 fucking pounds, and it sucks my ass, and I hate it. Additionally, when you are on lunch for that long, only 45, then you gotta fucking do math the second you punch out. And they're sitting there going, well, just set an alarm on your phone. I shouldn't fucking have to, dude. There shouldn't be work involved in taking a break. You swipe your card or you punch your number and then you go away for a while. And then you come back and you resume your duties, and then at the end of the day, you fuck off home. Hopefully you're not the kind that's on call or has to do additional work once you leave the office, like answering emails.
It's frustrating.
So now, my morning doesn't start off with that collective group time where we all just kind of, ease into it. I have to clock watch for the goddamn huddle. I have to clock watch for my goddamn lunch. I have to clock watch while I'm on lunch. And I have to sit there later on and clock watch for my 15 that I have to take by a certain point, but the way that the afternoon shakes out, it's never on fucking time. And it's ridiculous. I go do 15 minutes of interneting, and then I come back and I'm pissed because, I work an hour later than everybody. Once they go home now, I stay for 45 to an hour after because that's what my special extra hour late start gives me. And that means I got to work with second shift, and they drive like fucking maniacs, and I constantly am just waiting for death to strike me or an accident to happen.
You're killing me, Smalls!
And as for that setting an alarm on your phone, you know what's got to be great? Not having to do that. Or years ago, those same workers that were up on the high beams, they didn't have phones. They didn't have to set alarms. They got to work. They did the job. Lunchtime, you go, you stuff a fucking sandwich or some leftovers in your gullet. You laugh a little. Maybe you go rock a piss. The whistle blows again and the boss goes, all right, let's go. And then it's back on the beams. Or you're a construction site and you pause filling potholes and you eat. And then he's like, back to work. And then you go do that. And there's so many people these days that have to work through lunch just to get everything done because our fucking work culture in America is obsessed with produce, and numbers of productivity. And my job's no different. And it sucks because the groove that I had in that show up, huddle, bust ass, go to lunch, come back, bust ass, go home. It fucked with my groove. There's too many stops now. I have to worry about my productivity numbers. You get down to a general flow of how many picks you're supposed to have per hour. And now it's just like, I don't even worry about that shit. I'm too busy worried about, and when am I going to get to lunch so I can get a break from this fucking monotonous bullshit that it's become? And when am I going to get to go and fucking eat something? And now I got to worry about if I'm on break too long with my lunch, which I did it one way for over 4 years. The brain is set. That's what it thinks. 1 hour. Start this minute, end that minute. And now it's different. I'm doing math. And sometimes you get the math off by a few minutes because it just... You know how simply adding 45 to a number would be, you know, if it was out of 100, but it's out of 60. And I can do math. I'm not fucking retarded. But it's still a pain in the ass. But again, if I'm gone too long, then it fucks with my day. There was one day where the girlfriend stops to have lunch with me and we go for a walk together. And because I broke from my new routine, I completely forgot the 45-minute thing. I was gone for a fucking hour. When I got back to the building with her, I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go check something quick on the internet. And I should have gone and punched in, but I didn't. I went for internet time, and it didn't dawn on me until afterwards. And then I had to go mope over to my boss, like, so I accidentally took a 1 hour lunch. He's like, how'd you do that? I'm like, a change from my routine? And I'm like, have you ever written the wrong date on a check or something after the calendar flipped to the new year? Yeah, one of those. You do it one way, and your brain's just kind of used to that. And if you're not paying attention and you're trying to relax or you're doing something else, your brain's on autopilot mode with muscle memory, and it just defaults to whatever the fuck it's holding on to at that time. And my brain is very built on routine, almost to an autistic level. And there I was, late, and he's like, well, I guess now you got to punch out by 4:15 to not get written up or something. So I have to sit here and fucking clock watch all day and worry about getting it right so they don't get sued, and then also worry about not getting written up for being bad at math or getting distracted. Because, you know, it's not like I don't have enough shit going on coming out of my phone with text messages from my kids, or checking that fucking stupid parenting app that my soon-to-be ex-wife forces us to use, or dealing with lawyers for my divorce that never ends because her attorney just wants to bleed me dry so I break and then she gets what she wants anyway, or any other myriad of shit like dealing with
The Beast.
Do you see how when you like routine and you have something that works for you, and then well-intentioned dipshit politicians add too much specificity because of some fucking East Indian bodega-owning dickhole who hires some 20-something Gen Z soft-as-baby shit whiner that cries too much and everybody's getting sued now? It's such a pain in the ass. Or you know, whatever warehouse out in California got sued too many times because they didn't give enough time for the Mexicans to go out to their car and eat leftover tacos from last night's dinner before coming back in to finish assembling medical devices and such. Now we got people that are like, yeah, I used to just be able to go on break, and now there's all this extra fucking worry and math involved. I got a neighbor that drives for a school bus company, and he's like, oh, it's a nightmare because our people have routes, and we have to get kids to and from, but then to not get in trouble, they have to stop at certain points and have a break when they normally would just keep driving, and then when there's a break in their schedule, they'd squeeze it in then. So it's causing chaos. I have other friends that work from home, and they're like, oh, I don't have to deal with that. And I think, oh, that must be nice to have your boss who's like, well, your whole day is basically a break. You work out of your office and your goddamn third level. So you go ahead and do that, and we won't worry about you suing us for it. But I would just want to say, I wish this law or these laws had never fucking needed to be put together. But honestly, there needs to be some fix to it now going forward, so that all these places that had employees that used to be able to take a 1 hour break and that was sufficient for the whole day, so we can have that back. Because it's not just me. I know it's about my struggle, but I've heard from other people like, oh, yeah, that sucks. We used to just sit in our truck and we'd have an hour to ourselves, but now we got to sit there and clock watch. Now we got to make sure we pull over. Now we got to log our hours closer. And it's fuckery, and it's too much government. That's what you get with Democrats. As much as they worry about labor laws and the worker, they seem to somehow fuck it up in the process. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It? That is at What Do We Call It? You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann. And that's the end.